Hello, welcome back to our channel. A young man sat alone in the parking lot outside a grocery store in a small American town. He held a job application in his hand, but he couldn't walk inside. Not because he was lazy, not because he did not care. He was afraid of English. Every sentence felt heavy in his mind. Every word sounded dangerous. He thought English belonged to smart people, rich people, city people, confident people. He believed grammar was a wall too high to climb. At the same time, hundreds of miles away, a young mother in a crowded apartment whispered English sentences to herself while her children slept beside her. She practiced one sentence again and again. "Can you help me?" 4 simple words. But to her, those words felt like freedom. And somewhere in the middle of America, a teenager working on a farm listened to English videos late at night while everyone else slept. He repeated phrases softly under his blanket because he was embarrassed when people laughed at his accent. Different people, different lives, but the same fear. The fear that English is too hard. The fear that grammar mistakes make you look foolish. The fear that your voice is not good enough. But tonight, something changes. This documentary is not another classroom lecture. This is not another complicated grammar lesson full of rules you forget tomorrow. This is a journey, a human journey, a story about how English is not a test you pass. It is a bridge you build. And step by step, lesson by lesson, story by story, you will discover something powerful. You do not need perfect grammar to begin. You do not need a perfect accent to speak. You do not need to be fearless to grow. You only need one thing: the courage to continue. Lesson 1. The first mistake many English learners make is believing language starts inside a textbook. It does not. Language begins inside emotion. A baby never studies grammar charts before speaking. A child never memorizes perfect sentence structure before communicating. Human beings learn language because they want connection. They want understanding. They want to belong. Imagine a boy named Daniel living in a rural town surrounded by long roads, cornfields, and silence. Daniel loved music, but almost every song he liked was in English. He did not understand the lyrics at first. Still, he listened every night. Slowly, certain phrases became familiar. He started singing along even when he pronounced the words incorrectly. One day, while helping his father repair an old truck, Daniel suddenly understood an English phrase from a song. "Keep moving forward." It was not grammar that changed his life. It had meaning. That moment matters because English learning becomes powerful when emotion enters the process. If your learning feels cold, mechanical, and stressful, your brain treats English like danger. But when learning feels connected to dreams, stories, songs, friendships, and real life, your brain becomes open. This is why fear destroys progress faster than mistakes ever will. Some learners spend years trying to avoid mistakes. Meanwhile, confident beginners improve faster because they are willing to speak badly before speaking well. English is not a museum where every sentence must be perfect before anyone hears it. English is a road, and roads are built by movement. Lesson 2. Maria worked at a diner near a highway in Texas. Every morning she smiled at customers, even though she felt nervous every time they spoke quickly. Sometimes she understood only half of what people said. Sometimes she guessed. Sometimes she made mistakes. One afternoon, an elderly customer noticed her nervousness. He smiled kindly and said, "Your English is getting better." Maria laughed. "No, it's terrible. The old man shook his head. Terrible English that communicates is more powerful than perfect English that stays silent. That sentence stayed with her forever. Many English learners believe fluency comes from knowing every grammar rule. But in reality, fluency comes from courage, repetition, listening, and emotional connection. Grammar matters, yes, but grammar should support communication, not imprison it. Think about how many native English speakers break grammar rules every single day. Real conversations are messy. People pause, repeat words, change sentences halfway through speaking, and use incomplete thoughts constantly. The goal is not robotic perfection. The goal is human communication. Maria began changing her learning method. Instead of memorizing long grammar explanations, she focused on useful daily phrases. She practiced simple conversations while washing dishes, driving home, and walking to work. How are you doing? I'm still learning. Can you repeat that? Small phrases became building blocks, and slowly, confidence replaced fear. Lesson 3. In a crowded city classroom in Chicago, students from different countries sat together learning English. Some were shy, some were loud, some were advanced learners, some barely understood basic sentences. Their teacher, Mr. Reynolds, walked into class carrying no textbooks. The students looked confused. Instead of teaching grammar that day, he told a story. He spoke about arriving in another country when he was young and feeling invisible because he could not communicate. He described the loneliness of hearing people laugh while not understanding the joke. He explained how language barriers can make intelligent people feel small. Then he asked one question. What matters more? Perfect grammar or meaningful connection? The room became silent. A student from Brazil slowly answered, Connection. Mr. Reynolds smiled. That is where fluency begins. The class spent the next hour sharing personal stories using imperfect English. Some students struggled, some forgot words, some mixed languages together. But something beautiful happened. Nobody laughed, nobody judged. Everyone understood. That classroom became a safe place because fear disappeared. When fear disappears, language grows faster. Lesson 4. Some learners secretly believe they are too old to learn English. Others believe they are not smart enough. These thoughts are heavy chains carried silently inside the mind. But listen carefully. The problem is not your age. The problem is not your intelligence. The problem is emotional exhaustion. Many people try learning English through pressure, shame, comparison, and fear. They watch fluent speakers online and think they are failing. They compare their first chapter to someone else's 20th chapter. That comparison destroys motivation. A man named Harold lived in a small town in Kentucky. At 52 years old, he decided to improve his English reading skills after years of avoiding books because he struggled in school as a child. The first book he read was written for children. At first, he felt embarrassed. But page by page, sentence by sentence, he improved. One evening, he told his daughter something emotional. For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of words anymore. That sentence carries enormous power. Because English is not only about language. Sometimes English becomes healing. Sometimes it becomes confidence. Sometimes it becomes proof that your past does not control your future. Lesson 5. Imagine learning English the same way people learn to swim. If someone stood beside a swimming pool explaining water for 10 years, would that make you a swimmer? No. At some point, you must enter the water. Language works the same way. Too many learners remain on the edge of communication, waiting for perfection before participation. But perfection never arrives first. Participation comes first. A young delivery driver named Chris practiced English while working late-night routes across California. Every stop became a classroom. Here's your package. Have a great evening. Take care. Tiny interactions repeated hundreds of times became automatic. This is how fluency grows naturally. Not through panic, not through endless self-criticism, but through repeated human experience. Chris later realized something important. The brain remembers emotionally useful language faster than academically forced language. That means conversations connected to survival, friendship, work, dreams, and emotion become stronger memories. So stop trying to memorize every difficult word. Instead, live inside English daily. Let English become part of your morning coffee, your music, your walks, your thoughts, your jokes, your goals, and your life. Lesson 6. The rain fell hard outside a small apartment in New York, while Jasmine sat at a kitchen table practicing English pronunciation. Her notebook was filled with crossed-out words and rewritten sentences. She was exhausted. Every time she tried speaking to native speakers, her confidence disappeared. She believed people judged her accent constantly. Then one night, her younger brother asked her a simple question. "Why are you afraid to sound human?" She laughed at first, but later she realized something deep. Native speakers do not sound perfect. They sound natural. Natural speech includes pauses, mistakes, unfinished thoughts, and personality. English learners often chase perfection so aggressively that they lose natural rhythm. But communication is emotional energy, not robotic performance. Jasmine stopped forcing every sentence to sound perfect. She began focusing on clarity instead. And strangely, people understood her better. Lesson 7. There was a gas station near a lonely highway in Arizona where a quiet teenager named Luis worked evening shifts after school. Most nights were slow. Trucks stopped for fuel. Travelers bought snacks and coffee. Luis used those moments to practice English. At first, his conversations were tiny. "Hello? Thank you. Have a safe trip." But every day he became slightly stronger. One night, a traveler asked him for directions. Luis stumbled over his words. His grammar was messy. His pronunciation was imperfect. Still, the traveler understood him completely. After the customer left, Luis realized something important. Communication succeeded even without perfect English. That moment changed everything. Fear had lied to him for years. Many learners believe mistakes automatically destroy conversations. But real communication is surprisingly forgiving. People understand more than you think. Confidence grows when you stop treating every mistake like a disaster. Lesson 8. Inside a crowded subway train. People stared at phones while life rushed forward at full speed. Among them sat an immigrant father named Victor, practicing English flashcards during his lunch break. He worked 12-hour construction shifts. He came home exhausted. Still, every night he studied. Not because he loved grammar, because he loved possibility. Victor understood something powerful. English was not only vocabulary, it was an opportunity. Better communication could create better jobs, stronger friendships, deeper confidence, and new doors for his family. Sometimes motivation becomes stronger when learning connects to purpose. If your reason for learning English is weak, your consistency becomes weak too. But when your reason becomes emotional, discipline becomes easier. Maybe your reason is helping your children. Maybe your reason is building a career. Maybe your reason is finally expressing your true personality without fear. Hold on to that reason, because difficult days will come, and purpose keeps people moving when motivation disappears. Lesson 9. A woman named Eleanor taught English at a community center in a small American town. Her students came from many different backgrounds. Some were refugees, some were workers, some were grandparents learning English late in life. On the first day of every class, she always wrote one sentence on the board. "Your voice matters before your grammar becomes perfect." That sentence transformed the atmosphere instantly. Students stopped hiding. They started speaking. One older student cried during class after successfully telling a personal story in English for the first time. The class applauded, not because the grammar was perfect, because courage was visible. Never underestimate emotional victories in language learning. The first phone call you survive in English matters. The first joke you understand matters. The first conversation without panic matters. These moments are proof of growth. Lesson 10. Most people think confidence comes after fluency. But the truth is often the opposite. Confidence creates fluency. Imagine trying to drive a car while constantly screaming at yourself for every small mistake. Your stress would increase. Your focus would collapse. English learning works the same way. Self-criticism creates mental tension. Mental tension blocks natural communication. A college student named Amir struggled with speaking anxiety for years. He knew grammar rules extremely well, but during conversations, his mind froze completely. One professor finally gave him unexpected advice. Stop trying to sound intelligent. Start trying to sound honest. That advice changed Amir's life. Instead of building complicated sentences, he started speaking simply and naturally. And for the first time, conversations began flowing. Complex English is not always strong English. Clear communication is powerful. Lesson 11. There is a hidden secret many successful English learners discover eventually. Repetition is not boring. Repetition is transformation. Professional athletes repeat movements thousands of times. Musicians practice scales endlessly. Drivers repeat the same actions until they become automatic. Language requires the same process. A waitress named Natalie practiced 100 useful English phrases repeatedly for 6 months. At first, repetition felt slow, but eventually, those phrases became automatic reactions instead of stressful mental puzzles. That is how fluency develops. Not through memorizing giant dictionaries, but through deeply learning useful patterns. Lesson 12. Late at night in a quiet neighborhood, a teenage boy sat on the roof of his house listening to American podcasts through old headphones. His name was Jordan. At school, he rarely spoke because classmates mocked his pronunciation. But alone under the stars, he practiced freely. He repeated sentences softly. He copied the rhythm. He copied emotion. Eventually, he noticed something surprising. Native English speakers do not only use words, they use energy. Tone changes meaning. Emotion changes meaning. Pauses change meaning. Learning English is not only about vocabulary, it is also about human feeling. That realization helped Jordan sound more natural over time. Lesson 13. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with rocks every day. That is what fear feels like during language learning. Some learners fear embarrassment so intensely that they stop practicing completely. But avoiding English never removes fear. Avoidance feeds fear. exposure weakens fear. A nurse named Carla forced herself to speak one new English sentence daily at work. Some days she succeeded confidently. Some days she stumbled. Still, she continued. Months later, she realized something incredible. The fear that once controlled her had become tiny. Not because she became perfect, because she became familiar with discomfort. Growth often feels uncomfortable before it feels natural. Lesson 14. A small-town librarian named Denise noticed something interesting about English learners. Students who enjoyed learning improved faster than students obsessed with perfection. Why? Because relaxed brains absorb language more efficiently. Stress blocks memory. Fear reduces creativity. Shame weakens motivation. This is why children often learn languages faster emotionally than adults. Children are not constantly judging themselves. Adults carry embarrassment. So Denise created a weekly storytelling club where learners shared funny personal experiences using simple English. People laughed, people relaxed, and slowly, their speaking improved naturally. Lesson 15. The road toward fluency is rarely dramatic. Most improvement happens quietly. A sentence understood faster. A movie scene suddenly becomes clear. A conversation lasting 2 minutes longer than before. Tiny victories matter. A mechanic named Robert once told his son something unforgettable. Big engines move because thousands of tiny parts work together. English improvement works similarly. Tiny habits create powerful transformations over time. 10 minutes daily matters. One conversation daily matters. Listening to daily matters. Consistency beats intensity. Lesson 16. Inside a crowded restaurant kitchen, workers shouted orders while dishes clattered loudly around them. Among the noise stood Elena, a dishwasher trying to improve her English. At first, everything sounded impossible. Words blended together. People spoke too quickly. Her brain became overwhelmed. But every day she listened carefully. Eventually, patterns appeared. Common phrases repeated constantly. Right away. Behind you. We need more plates. Language slowly became less mysterious. This is an important truth. Your brain is designed to recognize patterns over time. You do not need to understand everything immediately. Understanding grows gradually. Lesson 17. Many English learners secretly wait for a magical moment when fear disappears completely. But courage rarely arrives before action. Action creates courage. A shy college student named Hannah joined an English conversation group despite intense anxiety. During the first meeting, she barely spoke. During the second meeting, she answered one question. By the fifth meeting, she was laughing naturally during conversations. The environment changed her. Supportive people accelerate language growth. This is why learning alone for years can feel emotionally exhausting. Human connection matters. Find conversations. Find communities. Find people who encourage effort instead of mocking mistakes. Lesson 18. A delivery truck driver named Malik spent hours alone on highways listening to English audiobooks. At first, he understood very little. Still, he continued listening daily. One morning, while driving through heavy rain, he suddenly realized he understood an entire story chapter without translating mentally. That moment shocked him. His brain had changed quietly through repeated exposure. Many learners quit too early because progress feels invisible initially. But invisible progress is still progress. Your brain builds language internally long before fluency becomes visible externally. Trust the process. Lesson 19. A grandmother named Rose decided to improve her English reading after retirement. Friends told her she was too old. She ignored them. Every morning she read simple English stories while drinking tea near her window. At first, reading one page felt exhausting. Months later, she finished the entire book comfortably. One afternoon, she smiled proudly and said, "My world became bigger." Language expands life. It expands confidence. It expands understanding. It expands opportunity. And growth remains possible at every age. Lesson 20. There is enormous power in speaking slowly. Many learners panic during conversations and rush their words nervously. But speed is not fluency. Clarity matters more. A teacher named Mr. Coleman always told nervous students, "Take ownership of your pace." When learners slowed down slightly, their pronunciation improved, their confidence improved, and their thinking became clearer. Native speakers slow down too when conversations matter. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to think. You are allowed to learn publicly. Lesson 21. In a quiet rural church basement, free evening English classes brought together strangers from different countries. At first, everyone sat far apart. People feared judgment. People feared embarrassment. But over time, stories connected them. One man shared his dream of opening a business. Another woman shared her hope of helping her children succeed in school. Language learning became emotional instead of academic. And that emotional connection increased commitment. Humans fight harder for meaningful dreams. Lesson 22. A teenage girl named Brianna loved American movies, but felt discouraged because actors spoke too quickly. Instead of quitting, she changed strategies. She watched one short scene repeatedly, first with subtitles, then without subtitles. Then she repeated the lines aloud. Slowly, her listening improved dramatically. This teaches an important lesson. Master small pieces deeply instead of drowning in overwhelming information. Depth creates confidence. Lesson 23. Many people believe grammar is the enemy. Grammar is not the enemy. Fear is the enemy. Grammar becomes useful when introduced naturally through communication. A football coach named Marcus explained grammar to students like sports strategy. "You don't memorize every play before touching the ball," he said. "You learn through movement." Similarly, grammar becomes easier after hearing patterns repeatedly in real situations. Experience first, explanation second. Lesson 24. The hardest part of learning English is often emotional exhaustion. Some days you feel motivated. Other days, your progress feels invisible. During those difficult moments, remember this. Every fluent speaker was once confused too. Every confident speaker once hesitated. Every powerful communicator once struggled for words. Growth is not linear. Some weeks feel fast, some weeks feel slow. Keep going anyway. Lesson 25. One evening, a young man named Ethan practiced introducing himself in English while standing in front of a mirror. At first, he felt ridiculous. But repetition slowly reduced embarrassment. Then, something unexpected happened. His confidence outside practice improved too. Because language learning changes identity. As communication grows, self-belief often grows beside it. People begin speaking more openly, dreaming more boldly, participating more fully in life. English can become more than a skill. It can become freedom. Lesson 26. A crowded bus rolled through downtown streets while commuters stared silently through windows. Near the back sat a quiet woman named Olivia, whispering English phrases to herself. She practiced because she feared job interviews. For years, she avoided opportunities requiring communication. Then one day, she decided fear had controlled enough of her life. She practiced daily during bus rides. Simple answers, simple questions, simple confidence. Months later, she attended an interview she once believed impossible. Her English was not perfect, but her courage was real. And courage often leaves stronger impressions than flawless grammar. Lesson 27. Listening is one of the most underestimated language skills. Many learners focus only on speaking, but strong listening creates stronger speaking naturally. A warehouse worker named Kevin spent months listening to English radio during long shifts. At first, everything sounded fast and unclear. Then, familiar expressions started appearing repeatedly. Eventually, his ears adjusted. Language became less like noise and more like meaning. Patience transformed confusion into comprehension. Lesson 28. There is something powerful about learning English through stories. Stories activate emotion. Emotion strengthens memory. A middle school teacher named Mrs. Turner noticed students remembered vocabulary from emotional stories far better than vocabulary from memorization lists. Why? Because humans are storytelling creatures. We remember feelings. We remember moments. We remember struggle and triumph. So if you want a stronger English memory, connect words to experiences. Lesson 29. One of the biggest myths in language learning is believing embarrassment means failure. Embarrassment is evidence of growth. A young chef named Leo accidentally used the wrong English word during a busy restaurant shift. Everyone laughed kindly. At first, he wanted to disappear, but later, he realized something funny. He never forgot that word again. Mistakes create memorable lessons. Perfection creates less learning than participation. Lesson 30. Some learners hide their personalities while speaking English because they feel insecure. But language becomes more natural when personality enters communication. Humor, emotion, curiosity, passion. These human qualities create memorable conversations. A student named Rachel improved rapidly after she stopped treating English like an exam and started treating it like real life. She talked about music she loved, movies she enjoyed, dreams she carried. Suddenly, conversations became meaningful instead of mechanical. Lesson 31. A storm knocked out electricity across a small town one winter evening. Families gathered around candles while silence filled the dark streets. Without phones or television distractions, people talked. A teenage English learner named Noah sat quietly listening to adults share stories. For hours, he absorbed natural conversation rhythms, interruptions, laughter, pauses, emotion. He realized real English sounded different from classroom English. Natural conversation flows imperfectly. And that realization reduced his fear dramatically. Lesson 32. An exhausted single father named David practiced English after putting his children to bed each night. Some nights he wanted to quit. Work drained him. Life overwhelmed him. Still, he continued because he believed his future could improve. Discipline matters more than temporary motivation. Motivation rises and falls. Commitment keeps moving. Even slow progress matters when continued consistently. Lesson 33. There is a dangerous habit many learners develop. They wait until they feel ready. Ready to speak, ready to apply for jobs, ready to join conversations. But readiness often grows through action, not before action. A young woman named Sophia finally joined an English book club despite feeling unprepared. Within months, her confidence exploded. The opportunity she feared became the opportunity that transformed her. Lesson 34. A farmer named Isaac once explained language learning using seeds. You don't plant a seed and dig it up every day, asking why it hasn't grown, he said. You water it consistently. English learning works exactly the same way. Daily exposure matters, daily patience matters, trust matters. Your progress may feel invisible temporarily, but invisible growth still exists underground before it reaches sunlight. Lesson 35. One of the greatest moments for any learner is understanding humor in another language. Because humor requires more than vocabulary. It requires timing, emotion, and cultural understanding. A student named Miguel understood his first English joke during lunch break at work. Everyone laughed. And for the first time, he laughed instantly too. That small moment made him feel included. Belonging is powerful. Language creates belonging. Lesson 36. In a quiet coffee shop near Seattle, aspiring writers gathered weekly to share stories. Among them sat an English learner named Nina. At first, she only listened. Eventually, she shared a short story written in simple English. Her hands shook while reading. But when she finished, people applauded sincerely. That moment changed her relationship with English forever. She stopped seeing English as an enemy. She started seeing it as a tool for expression. Lesson 37. Many learners underestimate the importance of self-talk. The way you speak to yourself shapes your progress. If every mistake becomes proof of failure, motivation collapses. But if mistakes become evidence of practice, confidence survives. A basketball coach once told his players, "Pressure reveals your inner voice." The same applies to language learning. Train your inner voice to encourage growth instead of attacking imperfection. Lesson 38. An airport security officer named Grace interacted with travelers from around the world daily. She noticed something fascinating. People remembered kindness far longer than grammatical accuracy. Warm communication creates emotional connection. This means communication success depends on more than perfect language. Tone matters. Patience matters. Energy matters. Humanity matters. Lesson 39. There will be moments when you feel stuck. Plateaus happen naturally. Improvement sometimes slows temporarily before major breakthroughs. A musician named Tyler compared language learning to practicing guitar. At first, progress feels exciting. Then improvement becomes slower and less obvious. But consistent practice eventually creates sudden breakthroughs. Do not quit during plateaus. Plateaus often appear right before growth. Lesson 40. A young nurse named Emily practiced English conversations while driving home from night shifts. She pretended passengers sat beside her. She answered imaginary questions. She described her day aloud. This habit strengthened spontaneous speaking. Because fluency grows through active usage, your mouth must practice alongside your brain. Lesson 41. The human brain loves familiarity. This is why repeated listening becomes so powerful. A factory worker named Samuel listened to the same English podcast episode 20 times. Friends thought he was crazy, but repetition trained his ears deeply. Eventually, phrases became automatic. Confidence increased because familiarity increased. Do not fear repetition. Repetition creates comfort. Comfort creates confidence. Lesson 42. A teenage athlete named Carter struggled during school presentations because anxiety made him forget English words. His coach gave him unexpected advice. Breathe before you speak. Simple, but powerful. Anxiety affects communication physically. When breathing slows, thinking improves. Calmness strengthens clarity. Lesson 43. One winter morning, a woman named Laura ordered coffee in English without rehearsing mentally beforehand. After leaving the cafe, she suddenly stopped walking. She realized something emotional. The conversation had happened naturally. No panic, no translation, no fear. Tiny victories often become life-changing moments. Celebrate them. Lesson 44. A retired truck driver named Ben loved telling stories. He once said, "People don't remember perfect sentences. They remember honest moments." That wisdom applies beautifully to language learning. Do not hide your humanity while speaking. Authentic communication leaves a deeper impact than robotic perfection. Lesson 45. Many learners become trapped by overthinking. They mentally edit every sentence before speaking. This creates hesitation. Fluency requires trust. Trust yourself enough to continue even when uncertainty exists. A surfer does not control every wave perfectly. They learn balance through movement. Conversation works similarly. Lesson 46. In a small American town surrounded by mountains, an evening English class gathered for graduation photos. Months earlier, many students had entered the classroom terrified to speak. Now they laughed together naturally. Not perfectly. Naturally. That difference mattered. Their teacher looked at them proudly and said, "Confidence changed your English more than grammar ever could." Lesson 47. The greatest transformation during language learning is often invisible. People begin believing in themselves differently. A young man named Adrian once avoided conversations constantly. After years of practicing English, he noticed something surprising. His personality became stronger too. He asked more questions, shared more ideas, pursued bigger goals. Communication changes identity. Lesson 48. There will always be someone more fluent than you. There will always be someone faster. But comparison steals joy from growth. Focus on your journey. Focus on your progress. The only meaningful comparison is between who you were yesterday and who you are becoming today. Lesson 49. A little girl once asked her immigrant father why he practiced English every night after work. He smiled tiredly and answered softly, "Because every new word gives us a bigger future." That sentence captures the heart of this journey. English is not only vocabulary, it is a possibility. Possibility to connect, possibility to grow, possibility to dream bigger than fear. Lesson 50. Tonight, somewhere in America, another learner sits quietly wondering if fluency is possible. Maybe that learner is you. Maybe you still feel nervous. Maybe grammar still scares you sometimes. Maybe conversations still feel intimidating. But remember this: fear does not mean failure. Slow progress does not mean weakness. Imperfect English does not mean impossible English. Every confident speaker you admire once struggled too. Every fluent voice once sounded uncertain. Growth belongs to people who continue. So continue. Speak even when nervous. Listen even when confused. Practice even when progress feels slow. One sentence at a time, one conversation at a time, one brave moment at a time. Because fluency is not built through perfection, it is built through persistence. If this documentary reached your heart tonight, remember something powerful before you leave. You do not need permission to begin speaking English. You do not need perfect grammar before your voice deserves to be heard. Your accent is not a weakness. Your mistakes are not proof of failure. They are evidence that you are trying, and trying changes lives. Somewhere ahead of you is a future version of yourself speaking English with confidence, laughing naturally during conversations, understanding movies without subtitles, helping others, sharing ideas, building dreams, and living without the fear that once held you back. That future is built by what you choose today. So practice daily. Stay patient, stay brave, and most importantly, never let fear convince you that growth is impossible. Because step by step, word by word, conversation by conversation, you are already becoming stronger. Keep going. Your voice matters, and your story is only beginning.